Hello, Dad. How's it going?
Hey, what's going on, buddy?
Things are going well. Hey, I'm going to interview you today, so if that's all right, because you're a veteran.
Well, that's why we're here.
Yep. All right. So tell us who you are and what you do.
All right. My name is James Bavery. I am a Master Sergeant in the U.S. Army. Infantryman is my military occupational specialty. And currently, I serve as the Senior Military Science Instructor at North Carolina Agricultural and Technical State University for their Army ROTC program.
That's good to hear. So you're still working in the Army, it seems,
Yes.
but you're still a veteran because, well,
So, I am a veteran in respect to being deployed to a
combat.
combat zone, right? But technically, I am not a veteran in the technical sense, as I'm still on an active duty service.
All right. Thanks for clearing that up. How long have you served in the military, and which wars did you fight in?
All right. So I have been in the U.S. military since 2001, both as Army National Guard, which is the branch I started in, before transferring over to the active duty side of the house. And I have about 19 years, a little over 19 years on active duty. And as far as wars I've deployed in, I've deployed to Iraq, an operation in Iraqi freedom, to Afghanistan, an Operation Enduring Freedom, and then most recently back to Iraq, an Operation Inherent Resolve, when that operation started. So altogether, I've deployed to Iraq 4 times, and I've deployed to Afghanistan once.
So you've been deployed 5 times. That's
Yes.
cool. So how was it over in Iraq and Afghanistan? I can't imagine they would be cool places in terms of temperature.
So pretty varied climates, right? So Afghanistan is very different from Iraq. Afghanistan, very mountainous area, high altitude, hot summers, and cold winters. In Iraq, various climates exist, from the southern end of the country to the northern end of the country. Much flatter, much hotter in Iraq. So rain, like, it topped out at 132, I think, was the hottest it was there, or hottest temp that I experienced. But as far as temperatures, pretty varied.
132.
Yep.
I could never survive in that weather.
Oh, you could.
Why did you enlist in the army?
That's a good question. So I was a junior in high school, and I got a letter in the mail from the Army National Guard. And to be perfectly honest, it sounded like it would be fun. I didn't really think about it too much. I went down to the recruiter's office the next day with my mother and enlisted in what's called their split option program. So the Army Reserve, yeah, there's the washing machine making noise in the back, so we're just going to ignore that. So enlisted in the Army National Guard under the split option program, which meant between my junior and senior year of high school, I went to basic training, or boot camp, what was Fort Benning, Georgia, is now Fort Moore, Georgia. And then I came back. I did my senior year of high school, and then upon graduating high school, I went back and finished my specialty training at Fort Benning, Georgia, in the summer of 2002.
So you joined because it sounded like fun.
Yep, sounded like a good time. So not a whole lot of thought into it, but went and just kind of never looked back.
Yeah. How was basic training like?
So basic training, probably a lot like people think. You are in a totally controlled, immersive environment. So you have drill sergeants, drill instructors, are sometimes referred to, and they control your day to day. And so you get there. They shave your head. They give you your uniforms, and then they start forming everyone into, or building everybody up as a team, right? So as an individual, you're kind of broken down to just rebuilt as a team. You start off with just basic activities, drilling, marching. Then you move on to shooting and some other field craft, tactical type skills. And then you just continue to build from there. So once the team is formed, and once you have a basic skill set with your understanding of the Army, orders, shooting, communicating, tactical movements, then they just continue to up the complexity of the task at hand. So then you move to battle buddy tasks, and then team task, which is usually a 4-person element, into squad task, which is 9-person. And then finally, when you move on to specialty training, you're looking at platoon tasks. So actually, I take the last one back. The platoon task was at the unit. So it got up to squad.
Yeah. So I would imagine it's not like for the average individual, no?
Well, I don't think it was anything that an average person couldn't do, an average healthy person couldn't do. It's more mental than physical as far as the challenges. I think that, how do I want to word this? In our society where we like to have things our way, we like to do things on our time. When you go to basic training or boot camp, you do everything on the drill sergeant's time. You don't have connections to the outside world outside of mail call. And so that can be incredibly challenging for those that are used to having things at their time or having things their way. And to be perfectly honest, like, it's meant to be difficult. So not everybody passes. It's designed in many ways to put everybody on the same playing field once you leave basic training. So you go to your unit, and units should expect a certain quality soldier when they get there, but it's also has the effect of weeding out those who probably should not serve in the Army.
Wow. What's your fondest moment serving in the military?
Fondest moment. Fondest moment.
You're really thinking about this one, huh?
I am. So I'll give you, I don't know if I have a singular moment. So let me answer the question of like what I enjoyed most about the Army. And really, this is why I've stayed in the Army. This isn't why I joined, but this is why I stay in the Army. And it's primarily the comradeship, the esprit de corps that you have with your fellow soldiers. So as a young soldier, deploying or back here in the States, there were other soldiers my age, and we were very close, and just going through that hardship builds very strong bonds. It also didn't hurt that I enjoyed what I did, right? So I deployed and I liked what I did. And so I stayed in it also because of that. But even as a senior non-commissioned officer, right, I have my counterparts the same rank, and we really lean heavily on each other to get the job done. And just kind of that shared hardship builds strong bonds, I guess.
Yeah. There is like a growing epidemic of loneliness going around, so I definitely feel like as a person in the Army, you don't have that issue as much.
Depends, right?
I
So,
mean, because you're saying it's like a band of brothers.
right. So I will tell you that as you, or at least as I have moved up in rank, right, and there's less and less people at the top, it does start to get a little bit um, more isolated than your junior soldier population. But yes, that's correct. So uh, through the military in general is a team sport, right? So whether it's the Army, the Navy, Marines, Air Force, Coast Guard, um, I presumably the Space Force. Don't know anything about the Space Force, but I'm sure it's the same. Same with them, right? That it's a team sport, right? And so no one does anything in and of by themselves. Um, in fact, you have soldiers or service members from the other branches who get out of the service, and that's one of the biggest struggles that they have. And from people that I have known that have served and have gotten out, is the biggest thing that they miss is that idea of the team of camaraderie, what have you, right? So, and some of them struggle. Some of them struggle with um, adapting to that change in environment when they get out.
Yeah. So how did you change during your time of service as an individual?
Okay, so the biggest change happened up front, as could be imagined, through basic training. Through basic training and the challenges that I faced, I mean, I went from a middle income suburban family. I played sports, right? Did football. Um, I wasn't a super tough kid, but I wasn't kind of, I was active, right? And so before going into the Army National Guard and before going to basic training, I would say I was like an average. We're talking about like physical. What can you expect physically, intellectually, what have you from um, a high schooler of my generation, right? I was probably about average. But once I came back from uh, basic training, I just had this mentality that nothing was impossible. I was challenged so much at basic training with just what we had to accomplish, and in the time we had to accomplish it. I had done so much in an 8-week period for basic training, um, that I just thought nothing was impossible. And that carryover into the rest of my life, there's never been, or very rarely has there been a time where it's like, I can't do something. More often the case is I can do it, and I underestimate the time requirement that it takes to accomplish something. So I was like, I can do all these things. I can do these 5 things at one time and get them all done until I inevitably burn myself out. And I'm like, okay, no, I can't do all 5 things. Maybe I do these 2 things well, and maybe I can do these 3 things reasonably well. But the idea of I can't do something is pretty foreign. And I attribute that to just starting out in the Army, and just being pushed past my limit.
Yeah. What tips do you have for people currently serving in the Army?
Currently serving.
Yep.
Well, the first thing I would say is to remain physically fit. That is a cornerstone of the military, particularly in the Army. Army and the Marines, many of the jobs that we have to do have a strong physical fitness component tied to it. And so that's number one. Number two is to financially plan ahead. This is really kind of focused at the young soldier population, soldiers that Sorry, the dog is running around making a bunch of noise, so it's kind of distracting me. But the second thing is to financially plan ahead. Young soldiers generally being away from home for the first time and having some money in their pocket that they're not necessarily used to can have the habit of just going and spending it all and not really thinking ahead. And the military in general have very good financial options, investment plan type stuff that is very simple. It's very easy. It can just kind of be put on, auto and just generate wealth for whenever they get out of the service. So that's probably the two biggest things. And I guess probably the last thing is that the military is a political organization. So what I mean by that,
your politics don't matter.
Well, it's not that it doesn't matter, right? But the military is apolitical in that it doesn't serve, like we don't serve the president. The president is the commander in chief. So if you're looking at a hierarchy, the president is the top of the food chain, if you will. But our oath is to defend the Constitution, right? Against all enemies, foreign and domestic. It's not to serve a particular party. It's not to serve a political or like an individual person or group or what have you, right? And so as a soldier or as a service member in the other branches, there are certain limitations on how we can execute our political liberties, right? So I can still vote. I can still dialogue and talk about politics, but I cannot, I can't go out to a rally in my uniform, right? Like whatever I do politically, there has to be a clear distinction that this is me as an individual sharing my own personal opinion. This is not me as a service member or a representative of the U.S. Army, right? And so there are times where, particularly in social media, that I have to stay away from, or I have to kind of okay, this is not the venue in which I can share my opinion or whatever the case may be. And so I would say it's not that my politics don't matter. They do matter. I still have those civil liberties. I just have to be
wary of how you go about it.
Right. They are limited to a degree. And honestly, that's a good thing.
Yeah. Earlier you mentioned wealth. I've been looking it up. Doesn't the Army pay for your health care in your college?
That is a benefit. So in regards to healthcare, so the military does have, medical insurance that covers everything. If you're away from, or I'll say everything, a large portion of medical necessities when you are not near a military installation. And then when you are at a military installation, depending on how large the installation is, you have services provided by other service members, right? So, the Army has its own doctors, nurses, specialists, et cetera, that work at an Army hospital that treat soldiers and veterans and, military dependents, right? So there's that. In regards to education, you have the Montgomery GI Bill, and you also have the post 9/11 GI Bill. Without getting the specifics, basically, that is just money available for service members after they have completed I think it's 1 year of service, and after they've completed all their initial entry requirements, they have that GI Bill or that money, federal money, to pursue a bachelor's degree. And last time I checked, it was up to like $53,000, but that was many years ago. It's probably a little bit higher now. Pending you've met this initial requirements, and you can take advantage while you're in. And if you decide to wait until you're out of service, you have up to 10 years once you get out of the service to use one of those two options, the post 9/11 or Montgomery GI Bill, pending you leaving honorably from the service. Some people are kicked out of the military for one reason or another. And when they do that, those benefits can be taken away from them.
Yeah, so just don't mess up, as in like
It's
don't
not.
commit a crime.
Yep, that would be solid advice.
Yeah. Would you recommend joining the army to the young men and women out there, and if so, why?
I would, and I would because for several reasons. One, just because I can say that joining the army was an incredibly beneficial and incredibly impactful choice that I made. So, going through the service, one, it allowed me to have a solid job that enabled me to take care of my family. And for many years, there's only one income in our family. Your mother taking care of you guys. And so, I could do that. But more than that, right? It taught me a lot. I've grown a lot as a person, as an adult, as a man. Like as a leader. There are just certain qualities that you learn through service in the military that I don't think can be learned elsewhere, or very few places elsewhere. So, like that idea going back to, I can do anything, nothing's impossible, I'll never quit attitude. There's not, in my opinion, there doesn't appear to be many places outside of the military that really foster that type of attitude, right? So going back to my deployment, there were times where I'm responsible for millions of dollars worth of equipment, right? I'm also responsible for the lives of the soldiers underneath my leadership, underneath my care, right? And so those are huge responsibilities. And when you have those responsibilities, it forces you to grow. You know what I mean? Like, so if I'm at a company, a Fortune 500 company, and I make a bad decision, that might hurt the bottom line. But if I make a bad decision while I'm deployed, that could result in somebody dying, right? So there's a drastic difference when it comes to responsibilities, in my personal opinion.
Yeah.
Apart from that, right? So all the perks, a part of like personal development and, the morale, we talked about that. There's opportunities to travel. There's opportunities to get your education, which we briefly discussed. There's opportunities to get other certifications outside of kind of like the normal traditional educational path we think about, right? There's just a lot there for the individual. But another part that I don't think gets enough attention, right, is the fact that when you serve in the military, regardless of why somebody joins the military, right, you are serving your country. You are serving your fellow American, like you are serving your neighbor. And those might be neighbors you agree or you don't have anything in common, or you don't agree with anything. They might be just you might not even associate with them out, on in your normal life, right? I
Yeah.
apologize for my words a little bit, but the bottom line is it's service. And when we have an occupation or a profession of service to your fellow human being, right? That's huge, right? And that is, it does something for your character when you really understand that and accept that and try to live up to that, right? And I personally believe that if more people served in the military, we would probably have less political infighting. We see a lot in the news media and what have you. And there seems to be not a lot of compromise, and it seems to be a lot of finger pointing and this and that. if more people served in the military, more people would have a inclination to make their country better instead of pointing the finger or trying to tear the country down or whatever the case may be, right? Because they've sacrificed, even if it's just time, they have sacrificed something to this country. And I guess the simplest way to say it, if you serve your country, right, it is not a far stretch to say that you love your country, or at least you will develop some strong inclination towards your country. And when you love something, you'll build it up. You're not going to tear it down.
Yeah.
So that, I think overall as a society, it would be good if more people served in the military.
I 100% agree. And before we cut out of here, anything else you would like to share?
I don't know if I do.
I think you covered all the bases on this one.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You asked me some good questions, so yeah, I don't think I have anything else.
All right. Well, thank you for your time. Thank you for being here. Really do appreciate it, then. And I will see you when I leave the room.
You sure will. All right.
All right.